September 1665, London's streets were collecting 7,000 corpses every week. That number wasn't a rumor. It was the kind of figure that appeared in official tallies and parish records, repeated until it stopped sounding like a number and started sounding like a city collapsing. But this video is not only about the plague as a disease, it's about the place where it happened, the streets, the houses, the markets, the routines, and the structure of London itself. Using AI reconstructions informed by historical surveys, parish records, eyewitness diaries such as Samuel Pepys, and mortality data from the Bills of Mortality, we're going to walk through daily life in London during the plague years. You'll see how people actually lived in the 1600s, what the city looked like before it disappeared, and why disease moved so quickly through these crowded medieval streets. If you care about history reconstructed from real evidence, like the video and subscribe. Now, let's step into London, 1665. London in those days was effectively two cities living side by side. At its core stood the City of London, 1 square mile enclosed by Roman walls built centuries earlier, a fortified heart that had outlived its original purpose. Beyond those walls lay the Liberties, densely populated districts with looser regulation, where cheap housing, crowded yards, makeshift workshops, and the city's poorest residents gathered and multiplied. The walls had once been defensive. Now they were crumbling with age, no longer protecting London from anything that truly threatened it. Houses leaned against them, narrow lanes threaded through them, life pressed against stone built for war. 7 gates controlled access: Aldgate, Bishopsgate, Moorgate, Cripplegate, Aldersgate, Newgate, and Ludgate. Each gate was shut at night, and in times of outbreak they became checkpoints, places where movement slowed, where suspicion grew, and where the boundary between inside and outside suddenly mattered again. To the south flowed the River Thames. Only one bridge crossed it, London Bridge, packed with buildings and shops, as if the city couldn't resist building even on its own crossing. For miles, it was the only way across. Every person, every cart, every animal moving south had to pass through that narrow choke point. And inside the walls, the streets followed no plan. They bent and twisted, shaped by centuries rather than design. Buildings had been added wherever space allowed, stacked on top of old footprints, creating a dense, tangled city that felt alive and trapped. Most streets were only 8 to 12 feet wide. Cheapside, the main road, reached 20 feet and felt enormous by comparison. A corridor that almost resembled order, but most people lived in alleys just 4 to 6 feet across, the kind of lanes where 2 people passing had to turn shoulders, where a cart could block everything, where the world felt close enough to touch with both hands. Buildings leaned inward, each upper floor jutting further out than the one below. Stand in a typical lane and look up. The upper stories nearly met overhead. Sunlight barely reached the ground. In poorer areas, streets were dirt. Even in better areas, stone and cobble could be uneven, slick, and hard underfoot. Down the center ran a drainage channel, meant for rainwater, but filled instead with waste thrown from windows, chamber pots, rotting food, animal remains. It became a moving strip of city refuse, a line where everything unwanted was pushed. When it rained, filth spread across the street. When it dried, it baked in the sun. The smell never left: human excrement, animal carcasses, market rot, and industrial refuse from tanneries and slaughterhouses that worked close to living quarters. London employed street cleaners, rakers tasked with scraping and hauling away the worst of it, but even in normal times they couldn't keep up. During the plague, many died or fled. Cleaning slowed, then stopped. The streets didn't just look different, they became a map of absence, a city whose maintenance depended on bodies that were now disappearing. Every building was timber-framed, with oak beams filled by wattle and daub, sticks woven and covered with plaster and mud. The wood was dark and weathered, the plaster cracked and stained. Buildings rose 3 or 4 stories. Ground floors were shops or workshops. Living spaces were above. The wealthiest merchants owned entire buildings. Poor families rented single rooms. Structures meant for one family now housed many. This wasn't just crowding, it was density turned into a way of life. Roofs were thatched or tiled. Thatch was cheap and common despite its fire risk, and chimney stacks had been added over time to structures built long before chimneys were normal. Windows were small. Glass was expensive. Poor households used shutters or oiled paper. At night, most homes stayed dark. Candles cost money. People rose at dawn and slept at dusk, not because it was romantic, but because light itself was an expense. Inside, rooms connected directly. No hallways, no privacy. Families shared beds. Children slept together. In subdivided spaces, curtains served as walls. The boundaries between families were cloth and habit rather than architecture. Sound traveled easily. Smells did too. In such a city, nothing stayed contained for long. London Bridge was a street that happened to cross water. Nearly 900 feet long, it was lined with hundreds of buildings, shops below, homes above, stacked into a crowded passage that turned a crossing into a neighborhood. The bridge rested on stone arches that forced the Thames through roaring currents. Water surged through narrow gaps with a constant sound like pressure never released. Boats attempting to pass often capsized, and the bridge became both route and barrier. The roadway between buildings was only 12 feet wide. Carts barely passed. Pedestrians pressed against walls. It was movement by friction. Traffic squeezed through a built funnel. At the southern gatehouse, the heads of executed traitors were displayed on spikes, boiled and tarred to preserve them. A warning turned into scenery, a city feature you stopped noticing. London trained people to accept the unacceptable as normal. Daily life. The city woke early. Bakers fired ovens before sunrise. By dawn, shop shutters opened along Cheapside, folding down into counters displaying bread, cloth, and tools. Apprentices ran messages. Porters carried loads. People bought what they could afford and what they needed that day. Because storage was limited and money was tight, water carriers delivered buckets to households that could pay. Most people couldn't. They drew water from the Thames or from wells dug near cesspits. It wasn't ignorance, it was necessity. Street vendors filled every lane. Fish sellers arrived by mid-morning and the smell became overwhelming. Their cries blended into constant noise, a soundtrack of commerce, hunger, and survival. Animals were everywhere. Horses, pigs, chickens, cattle driven through streets to market. Children played among the filth, because there was nowhere else to play. Beggars sat in doorways. Chamber pots were sometimes emptied from windows without warning, and people learned to walk with instincts, close to walls, eyes up. Life was loud, crowded, and relentless. Movement itself felt like work. Markets were the city's pulse. Smithfield, just outside the walls, was the livestock market. Thousands of animals arrived weekly. The ground turned to mud, mixed with manure. Noise and smell spread across the city like weather. Many animals were slaughtered nearby. Blood ran in yards and streets. Waste was dumped into water sources. Billingsgate was the fish market. In summer heat, fish rotted quickly. Cleaning waste went straight into the Thames. Leadenhall Market was enclosed and more orderly, but still crowded and poorly ventilated. And street markets appeared in every neighborhood, blocking narrow lanes. Vendors left garbage behind when they left. By late afternoon, stalls vanished, but the residue remained. Scraps, waste, footprints, and the smell of a day's trade. Housing the poor. The worst housing lay in the Liberties, districts without building regulations where landlords built cheaply and packed in tenants. Old buildings were subdivided repeatedly. One room housed multiple families. Curtains replaced walls. Beds were shared in shifts, and even rest became scheduled around labor. Behind street-facing buildings lay inner courtyards filled with more structures. Light barely reached them. Passageways were so narrow only one person could pass. Some were covered, forming tunnels through blocks where the air felt stale and time felt slowed. Cellars were the worst, damp, dark, flood-prone. The poorest lived there, surrounded by waste, mold, and stagnant air, trapped at street level or below it. In summer, heat turned rooms into ovens. In winter, lack of fuel turned them into cold stone boxes. This wasn't a hidden corner of London. This was a major part of the city's living reality. Sanitation. There was no sewage system. Every building had a cesspit. When full, night soil men were meant to empty them, but pits often overflowed. Waste leaked into soil and wells. Many people dumped waste directly into the streets or the Thames because alternatives were limited or costly. The Fleet River was an open sewer. At low tide, its banks exposed deposits of human waste and garbage. A few public latrines existed over the river. Drinking water came from the same polluted source, carried from the Thames to households by water carriers. People cooked and washed with it too. The new river, completed in 1613, brought cleaner water from springs in Hertfordshire. It helped, but access was limited, and queues were long. In a city this crowded, cleaner water didn't reach everyone equally, and contamination found its way back into daily life. Work, plague, and collapse. London was not only crowded, it was inseparable from its labor. Workshops filled every street. Families lived above their trades. Tanneries cured leather with waste. Butchers slaughtered animals behind shops. Breweries and bakeries burned constantly, and dye runoff stained water sources. Industry wasn't contained or distant. It existed inside daily life, with no barrier between work, waste, and living space. When plague appeared in the spring of 1665, it spread without resistance. By summer, it was everywhere. The city's structure made containment impossible. Overcrowded housing collapsed first. Entire buildings disappeared from the living. Authorities sealed infected houses shut. Red crosses marked doors. Families were locked inside together. Some hid cases. Some bribed guards. Death outpaced burial. Churchyards filled. Plague pits opened. At night, carts moved through the streets calling for the dead. By September, 7,000 people were dying each week. Markets failed. Shops closed. Streets emptied, not by design, but by loss. Winter slowed the disease. Survivors returned. London endured, but this city, built without planning, sanitation, or margin for survival, had already revealed its weakness. Within a year, it would vanish. Not from plague, but from fire. This was London during the plague years. Not romantic, not picturesque. A crowded, dangerous city where most people lived short, difficult lives, and where disease could kill 1 in 5. If this kind of historical reconstruction interests you, subscribe, like the video, and tell us which lost city or era you'd like to see next.